Hello, and welcome to Radio Somanaut. I'm your host, Whitney Dawn Piles, and in each episode, I'll be interviewing inspiring and innovative individuals who are impacting the world through somatics, using the modality we call body-oriented coaching. Each one of my guests is a Somanaut. That means they're a graduate of the Somatic School, an online educator that trains coaches to be stewards of the body's wisdom. We'll be hearing their stories and getting particularly curious about how they're carrying this impactful work into their lives and communities. So in the spirit of the Somatic School, my invitation to you is to embrace ease, take a breath in, and allow their words to be a welcome exhale. Welcome to Diverse Bodies, Diverse Practices. This is our America's panel of Somanauts. They are all graduates and one current attendee of the Somatic School. My name is Whitney Dawn Piles. I am our community connector here at the school. I am also a body-oriented coach myself and the host of Radio Somanaut, which is the Somatic School's official podcast. I am currently on vacation with my family in Hudson Valley, New York, in the US. I've lived in a lot of different places in the US, but home at this season of my life is usually Columbus, Ohio. I am here joined by Bryony Duncan, Caro Gomez, and Darin Harris. It is wonderful to see you all. And before we jump into this conversation, I would love to have each of you just briefly introduce yourselves, maybe share where you're joining us from, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Whoever wants to jump in first, you are welcome.
I'll go ahead then. So my name is Caro Gomez, and I'm currently in El Salvador, but I'm based in London, but I do kind of split my time a bit between the two. And I think that kind of sort of in a nutshell says a little bit about what I do and who I am. And that's really someone who navigates between the two, whatever those two are, sometimes three, sometimes four, sometimes five. So besides training as a somatic coach in 2021, I'm also a podcast host of my own podcast. I facilitate Women's Circle with cacao, with song, with ritual, with ceremony. Some would call me a medicine woman. I am still in the process of owning that title, I suppose, but that's what some would say, as well as a fashion designer and textile artist. So yeah, I do a lot of things, but very much all rooted in this desire to bring remembrance to people around the world, more specifically women, and a sense of rootedness and belonging, and really whatever physical form my work has, it's always rooted in ancestry and belonging and identity, a lot of color and a lot of joy for sure. So that's me.
Thank you, Caro. Yeah, Darin.
Yeah, hi. Darin Harris. I am a now ICF-certified somatic coach, recent graduate of the Somatic School, and I work in context. Oh, I should say I'm in Madison, Wisconsin in the United States, and I work in the context of organization and groups. So this organization that I co-founded is called Living Giving Enterprises, and what we do is help people rejoin and reimagine communities and groups. So the context that I work in almost exclusively, in addition to one-on-one coaching, is in groups. And if you know about community or groups, they're messy, they're wild, they have conflict, they have confusion, and many leaders get stuck in this transition from individual work to group work. And so our programs help people make those transitions, be effective, be creative, be joyous in community. So that's what I spend my time doing. It's great to be here and see y'all.
Thank you, Darin, and yeah, congratulations.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bryony. and the accent is from Scotland. But I live in Brazil. I live in Niterói, which is just over the bay from Rio. And I've lived here for almost 15 years now. And I'm in this process of a transition of various things. So I'm in the middle of the course, in fact, a bit more than halfway now, of the somatic coaching course. And it's you know, at that stage of new ideas sprouting for me here. And so I'm also almost at the end of a music therapy qualifications. And so I'm kind of in that same space with music. And part of my work is also about working with groups of people and working about the relationships, you know, the dynamics that happen within that space, using music as a language, as a, you know, material to kind of do that too. So a mixture of things. Before I became on this journey, I've always worked with NGOs and community-based organizations. And so what motivates me about the work that I do is about the facilitating that other people can get things done and can, you know, move forward and enable other things to happen. So that's the space in which I'm kind of growing at the moment.
Thank you, Bryony. Welcome. That fresh, new energy is still in progress and beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And just right off the bat, it just seems we're doing something here. Each of us are doing weaving or cooking or something like that. There's threads that we're weaving together. Definitely noticing that and hearing that in your shares. Yeah, and with that said, I like to start at the beginning. And so I'd love to hear from each of you on why you initially chose to train as a body-oriented coach, as a somatic coach. What were you doing, or what were you noticing that had you feeling that this was the next right step for you? Whoever feels compelled, when you're ready.
I can start. So I was working during COVID with a bunch of public health officials all over Wisconsin and later all over the United States. And in this really difficult time when people were, I don't know what it was like for everyone around the world, but things were so tense here. And there were people crossing picket lines. There were people threatening with guns. It was very violent and very, very oppressive in many ways. Lots of differences of opinions. And as I talked to more of these health officials about how to move ahead, how to even be in this really difficult, messy, complex times, I found myself talking with them through the body. How do you breathe? How do you stand? How do you de-stress after your day? Many, many questions that ended it in the body, even though I had like consulting things to say or facilitative things to say. The action and that kind of support they needed a lot of times landed in the body. And so what prompted me to go on this journey of the somatic journey is seeing it really work for the people that were in the most difficult circumstances and being able to be of service to them in those difficult circumstances. And then later asking myself, okay, I think I'm painting, like if you were a painter, I'm sort of painting in a way that feels like it's like, I think this is the right media, but I'm not trained, and I'm just sort of pulling out colors and hoping they work. And they did sometimes, and they really didn't other times. And so I wanted to then learn the rigor and learn the language and learn the skills and the practices of somatics in a way that I could really have the full, let's say, palette of colors to continue that analogy. So that's how I got my real kind of impetus for doing somatic work.
Thank you, Darin. And another painting. We're weaving, we're cooking, we're painting now. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
I'll go ahead. So for me, I came from a, as I earlier mentioned, fashion and textile background, and I had always innately kind of felt this real connection to my body, especially through dancing, movement, not professionally dancing because not at all in that way, but I think culturally we are very connected to music and sounds and moving our bodies. You know, it's kind of in our blood, even though it may sound a bit of a cliche, but I often find that that cliche is true for people who are from Latin America. And so I've always kind of known that when things aren't quite flowing or something's going on, like dancing, music, that always helped move that or dissipate it or change it or transmute it. And with that kind of inner wisdom, I guess I've always moved through my life like that. And I was doing fashion at the time, and textiles is what I moved to London to do. And then I guess I was exploring what happened to our clothes on our bodies, and how some things can make us feel restricted, and how that affects maybe how we show up, how we stand up, or how we sit, or how we move or not move because of the clothes that we wear, or what happens with the colors that we wear, or if we choose not to wear colors, and all that kind of exploration. And so I was like, there must be something out there that gives space for this exploration in like what's going on in the body and how does it want to express. And I can't remember exactly how I came across the somatic. So I possibly, oh yeah, I remember actually. I was in a podcast. I was interviewing a podcast by Tamu Thomas, who is a Somanaut alumni, and she had Nathan in her podcast as well. And so I tuned into that podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the thing that I've been looking for. And you know how everything is so aligned when you're in the flow of things. And so I found out about it, and then I was like, yeah, this is the thing that I've been looking for. So I came at it from a space of, I've never coached, I've never done any coaching. Naturally, I love to teach, and I love to share, and I love to mentor and guide. But I did think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the only one in that space who has no idea what they're doing. And from the start, it was very clear that that wasn't the case at all. And so I immediately felt at ease and was able to kind of go into it knowing that whether there were people in the room who were decades of experience in coaching was actually a great thing, because it showed me what was possible. And those of us who had no experience in coaching but had this inner awareness of the intelligence of the body, we were kind of coming in with a really fresh, different way of looking at it that those with loads of experience benefited from. So I think that mix is always really powerful in the training space.
Thanks, Caro.
Yeah, that mix is kind of a bit how I feel hearing you both talk about this as well, because I have a very like lived experience of feeling things. So, you know, like when I was young, I used to play piano as an expression of how I was feeling. So, you know, if I was upset about something, I'd go and play piano, and or if I was really, you know, sad about something, I'd go and play the piano. And so there's a kind of, you know, vibration of what that kind of expression is. And dancing when I was younger and things. And then I think the experience of coming into a different culture, Caro, you probably share this as well, is that there's a lot of communication has to happen with your body until your language communication gets up to speed, you know, on the different language. And so I think there's, you know, there's quite a lot of training in responding to bodies and using your body to express things, or letting the body express things, you know. And when I was pregnant and deciding what, I worked for an NGO for a long time that works using martial arts as a way of engaging with young people in communities that are really affected by violence, luta pela paz. And so I left that work when I became a mother, deciding on a new, I sort of felt like it's the time to do a new journey, but not really knowing where it is. So I kind of feel like I'm on this part of this journey where I take up music therapy and have this kind of somehow serendipitous, conversation that makes me aware of coaching as a type of work, And I go, oh, that's quite interesting. And I went to coaching, first of all, with another school. And then I came across somatic coaching. And then it was like, oh, yeah, this all makes really a lot of sense. Just like you're saying, Caro, the kind of wisdom of that experience that then, knits in with what the school offers as a way of, structuring things and giving some frameworks or giving some structures to the kinds of things that I was doing naturally or feeling like I was engaging with, So it's a great experience so far. We've got 2 more modules still, so there's lots of gifts and sparkles to come, I think.
Thanks, Bryony. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing on that. It's really nice to hear a little bit more of your journeys to the skill or to the school. And then just a quick pause for invitation here. We've had a few more people join us. Welcome. Yeah, an invitation here as this conversation is happening for panelists and for the people listening now or in the future, just an invitation to, if something someone says really resonates or feels really nourishing to take in or inspires you at all, please take a moment with it. And if you feel compelled, feel free to share something in the chat as well. And just something I'm really noticing as each of you are sharing and even just bringing in these words, weaving and cooking, and then Darin bringing in painting, and then Caro bringing in textiles, and Bryony bringing in the piano. There's just this really, I'm just imagining like pottery or like getting your hands in some clay or playing with color. I'm just imagining these different threads that we weave together that become our life's or our season's work. And so it really, so today, talking about these global perspectives on body-oriented coaching, we're very much going to be even more talking about our context than the context that we're bringing this work into. And before we go that direction, I'm actually really curious to hear from you all. Darin, like what else is on that palette? What else are you painting with outside of body-oriented coaching that you've found blends really well or enhances really well? And Bryony and Caro, what are you weaving in? What are you bringing into the way you're working, Caro? And then of course, what you're imagining for yourself, Bryony. I'm just, really curious to hear more about like what's coming into this process as you're shaping the way that you work with people, what influences, what modalities, what other skills are you kind of carrying hand in hand with body-oriented coaching with the people that you work with? So very elaborate way of saying that. If you all are with me, I would love to hear your response. However you interpret that.
No, I love that question because it really speaks to this thing that we tend to have as Somanauts, as people who are interested in the body and have all these other paintbrushes. We say in the school we're bridgy people because we do that naturally, and I think that one of the things that for me was really important, but I didn't know was going to happen, is that in doing the training, I found something that felt very grounded and rooted as a framework, but then I could use that just to kind of like hold on to all my other paintbrushes or threads, if we were going to go with the textiles analogy. It's like it needed the frame you know, like when you're weaving, you need the kind of the machine that weaves, but then you have all the threads that makes all the colors and the patterns and the you know, the that brings the joy and the magic and the like, wow, what is this? And I think that for me, that was really important, because as someone who is creative, I can tend to just want to do all the things. And I was really looking for something that I could kind of weave onto. And I think that was the framework of the somatic school training for me. And so now I don't really call myself a somatic coach or a body-oriented coach, but definitely the tools and the skills and everything that I learned and that I continue to learn, because I'm close to the school, are things that I bring into my work, especially in group work, because I do a lot of group work, and I work with cacao as well, which is a plant medicine from here, well, from El Salvador. And I'm very embodied in the process of bringing it through. So I go to the farm, I pick it, I help ferment it, I help roast it, I help dry it in the sun, like I help, like being really embodied in that process has become way more powerful because of the awareness that I now have from having done the training back in 2021. I mean, it's a very, talk about the felt sense, right? Whenever you engage with nature, it just becomes alive in a different way. And I think prior to that, I would have done it in a probably more automatic way. And now there is a lot of awareness around it. And even things like orientation or focusing or the Hakomi experiments. I mean, all those things I use in my work. And I think that that's the flexibility that it brings, is that you can, if you want to stick to being a somatic coach and calling yourself that, great, awesome. But there's many people that come through that have these other threads around them. And I often get the question, like, how do you weave them together? Like, how do you bring them together? Or can you? Are you allowed? And yes, the answer is you are allowed 100%. And in fact, I would say that that's what makes your offering even more unique, because you have, the framework that we all have, but then you add your own sparkles and your own decoration and your own, cherry on the cake. It's like you get the foundation of the cake, the sponge cake, and then you get to make it your own with your own experiences and life experience and wisdom and your own creation, right? So so that's what I can say about that. Yeah.
Maybe I can jump on top of that. I work with a lot of organizations, and they often will have a face that feels very corporate, inhumane, and one or two dimensional. And if you've ever been in a meeting, a lot of times they start that way, right? You're around a table, people are showing up, et cetera, in all their states. So what the somatic experiencing that I've really learned here in the somatic school is that when people are going through these transitions and wanting to reach in and be more creative, more human, more vulnerable, go through the mess of just being in a group of people, because it's messy. It almost always is, and especially if you're being honest. So being somatic means that I can have what I call discomfort tolerance. I can be more tolerant of discomfort because I know what to do with it. There was a time when you freak out if you get uncomfortable, right? But one of the great tools that I learned from the somatic school, and also just naming that, was being able to give yourself a little bit of distance and a little bit of information about what's happening without going over the edge, without freaking out. A friend of mine, a wise elder, she says, baby, you got to flex and flow without freaking. And I love that. There's a huge amount of wisdom there. So one of the great things about somatics is it allows you to do this kind of flexing and flowing in the discomfort, just like dancing and painting and weaving and all the things we've been saying. It's a very organic process, this creative community process. And so being able to be with all that messiness and the joy too, like not, say, sorry, we can't be joyous in this meeting. It's ridiculous if I were to just say that, but that's one of the implicit rules in many table meetings is like we can't laugh, we can't be joyous. That's not effective. That's not corporate. That's not efficient. So both being with the discomfort and the comfort and being in the mess is one of the great skills that you cultivate in these kinds of practices of somatics.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. I'd love, Bryony, if you'd like to share, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, I know that you're very much like in your process with all of this, you're still, you're still in the training, and as well, you're also studying music therapy. And I'm just really curious how the beginnings of this process of layering or cooking or painting or weaving, I'm really curious going for you.
It's really interesting because it's really, each one's kind of pollinating the other one. Is my audio managing to come through?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. The video is a little bit delayed.
Let me do a little fix and I'll come back to.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Okay, so we've already begun a little bit to talk about our contexts. And when I say context, I'm thinking about where we are in the world or where we're between in the world, where we are in the world, the languages that we're doing this work in, and that could be literal spoken language, or that could also mean just translating this work to be accessible and digestible to the particular clientele that we work with. And so I'm really curious about your contexts and why this work, why somatics, why body-oriented coaching, why it's important in your current context. Why is it important for the people that you work with? Why is it important in the part of the world or parts of the world that you find yourself doing this work in?
Beautiful question. I love that. For me, I think, like I said, I've always had this deep reverence of our bodies. I'm not entirely sure where that comes from, but I've always kind of been like, wow, that's amazing that we don't have to do anything and our heart just pumps all this blood everywhere and it just does it for us. And it always amazes me. And I think bringing that through to my life, to the work, to my parenting, to my relationships has always been really important, even though for the longest time, or at least until I joined the school, I didn't have language for it or understood how to talk about it. So that was really important to have that. And once that came along, I've lived now half of my life in London in the UK, but I was born and raised in El Salvador. It was really important for me to bring both things into the land that I found myself in, or that I have found myself in over the past 21 years. And what I'm finding is that the more I speak about my own roots, my own remembrance, my own desire to connect to my ancestry and where we come from, is people around me are interested in remembering their own stories. And it often happens that because I'm based in London, in the UK, people are starting to look in their own gardens as to where they come from, as opposed to traveling across the ocean to India or to the Amazon in order to reconnect with those parts of themselves. And I often suggest that part of that is because a lot of the history and ancestry and rootedness in lands like the British Isles or the UK was destroyed, because it's a much more ancient land, and therefore a lot of it was just destroyed and forgotten. And so I have found this real beautiful thing where I kind of go, wow, we in Latin America or Southeast Asia or Africa or other continents around the world have this real privilege when it comes to our spirituality. And we actually lead on that. And this is why the West looks at us to kind of go like, oh, what are they doing? And so it's a real honor to lead that conversation and to really share that with people. And so I think that it's essential actually that we, all of us, connect back to that, no matter where we are in the world and no matter who our ancestors were, because they all did crappy things. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that and not only look at the good or not only look at the bad. And I think in the language of somatics, there's so much nuance because in our bodies, they show us the nuance inherently. They speak in our felt sense is nuance, right? One moment we're like, oh, wow, this feels so expansive and lovely. And the other moment we're like, oh, I'm so tight and I can feel everything crunching up inside. And so that's the bit that I'm really interested in shining a light on as I do this work.
Thanks, Caro, Darin, and Bryony. What comes up for you when you think about, feel into this idea of bringing this work into your context, where you are, the work that you do, the people that you work with? Why is somatics, why is body-oriented coaching, why is this thread important right now where you are?
Hi, I think I'm back. Sorry about earlier.
Yeah.
Yay! It's really interesting to hear, the European that goes to South America to seek something, because that's exactly what was my very first movement this way to Brazil, to Latin America, like about 20 something years ago, was that I need to be somewhere where I don't know anything. I don't really know the language. I don't know anything about the culture. I need to throw myself into somewhere where I can just perceive, and absorb. And being here, I'm now here 15 years, and doing this work, it started with some, really special connections that I made with people here who are very much working in that area of spirituality. As Caro's talking about, it's, really very live and really much more part of the day-to-day culture here than I was used to, having come from Scotland. So I'm kind of on that sort of bit of a journey, and as I'm doing the coaching training, and each module is per month, so you kind of absorb and digest a bit of that information, and then next month it opens a whole other door to some other parts of the experience and the content. And I'm seeing that in my music therapy, where I'm also at the stage of having to write about something, having to do, like the final thesis, that it's becoming really, so it's turning into, the final thesis there is turning into looking at music, the role of music in groups through this lens, this somatic lens. And so, in terms of where the works are, joining, there's definitely something coming together there, which is about music and groups and the somatic experience, how it is that music can express a felt sense, which is something that I have experienced personally in some of those amazing rituals with friends, in which I've kind of felt that connection between something that comes from you and a way of expressing it. So the kind of messy groups that Darin's talking about is the kind of area that I like to explore with a group of people, exploring musically, you know, seeing how an expression of something that they're feeling might come out as a sound. It could be a sound, you know, on your own body, or it could be a, you know, vocal sound. It could be a playing an instrument. You know, there are lots of different variations of how to express that felt sense. So that's kind of, I think, where where my work is heading. But I'm definitely feeling like I'm just feeling the way, still sensing a direction, but being really open to possibilities as well. You know, I loved hearing Darin talk about his work. You know, that kind of thing about just helping people get used to the fact that groups are messy, and so how do you just get better at being in the middle of a mess? How does that, you just don't get, you know, thrown off course so much. So yeah.
Thanks, Bryony. Yeah, Darin, jump in, called out.
Sure. Yeah. No, I love this conversation. So I was a facilitator, am a facilitator for 30 years, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of just being in a group, doing all sorts of stuff. One of the, I would say, newer ingredients as I've now gone in this third decade, and somatics is a really large piece of this, is that as a facilitator, you move from you being the front of the stage to you being the director of the stage to you being sort of the paper or the container or the energy even upon which this is acting, right? And so one of the really cool evolutions of a facilitator's work, and I use it with the kind of large F facilitator versus I am the facilitator of a group, but one who wants to lead in a collaborative way, however you describe that, is that I can just pause and allow and afford and have a lot of spaciousness around groups, because I trust them, you know, and I trust that I'm going to be feeling it and leaning in as a felt sense and an energy sense and many other sense. So it's a little bit like they describe like a firefighter knowing when a building is going to fall down. You know, they've been in buildings so long that they can sense sort of, okay, danger, I need to get out of the building. And in most cases you don't. And so I feel very lucky and very grateful that after so many years of being in groups, I now can just trust the energy of it and let go a little bit more and allow some affordance to that group. And somatics has really allowed me to lean in here, because I can feel it in the body and I can feel it in the energy of the group. I don't have to intervene and make it about me all the time, which is where you start when you're a facilitator, typically, especially when I was in my 20s. And then later, oh, I need to be directing, I need to take it, I need to intervene. And somatics is really, I find, so subtle and so beautiful. This Caro, that speaks to your, I think, really good articulation that there's an affordance and an allowance in somatic work that isn't just immediately intervening. There's a way to be with it that's on a different level. And I really enjoy that and have gotten words for it and practices for it through the somatic work. So yeah, that's how I'm starting to translate it in everything that I do in groups that way. I hope that's an answer to your question, Whitney.
Oh, who knows? But it was such a wonderful share and such a wonderful thread here too. And I don't even know, prior coming into this conversation, that there was such like shared experience around groups, and I'm really loving that thread, and it's feeling very resonant for me in my own work and facilitation and groups and movement in groups. And free form movement in groups and, letting things happen, and trusting the process. And I love what's coming in here is just this. I mean, what you said, Darin, there, pause and allow, the allowance, the leaving space for, giving something space to breathe, and trusting what's meant to emerge will. And then we take it from that next moment. So there's this real quality of presence in everything that you all, not in everything, in what you all are sharing. There's this presencing and this idea of how we are in those spaces and what we're bringing and modeling, even if that is just energetically or in the way that we hold the container. And it reminds me so much. And I actually said this on the last panel as well, because it was there for me then. But when I came into the coaching world, what I found so beautiful was this, our clients are creative, resourceful, and whole. And extending that out to a group of human beings and really bringing in this quality of trust and presence that is what facilitates growth and change or progress or whatever we're here gathering around. And so I'm really glad that this group dynamic has come into our group dynamic. And it leads me to a question. Thinking about groups, thinking about, being in different places, in different countries, in different cultures, thinking about all of that or bringing all of that in. There's just what is the potential of somatics to connect us? What is the potential of somatics to connect us in your opinions?
Started doing this, we call them restorative practices, in the work that we do. And one example of a restorative practice is you play music and you ask someone to hear that music and have that experience, and then they partner with someone and then just describe their experience. I heard this, I felt that, right? And then you take the next step. You say, okay, so your partner's experience, you want to take that on right now. You want to look through their experience like you would look through a pair of glasses. And now we're going to listen to that music again for a second time and have you experience it through their lens, through their perspective. And it is amazing to see the potential of human beings to, once they can apply a somatic experience, like listening to music, for instance, extremely somatic for most people, but they're not used to doing that in your average meeting. But once you show them or have the experience of, this is music and you can listen through another person's lens, to me, the potential of that now to take that to many, 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 many different places in whatever your event or your meeting or what coaching, anything would be, is just so, there's so much possibility there that to me, introducing small little tiny experiences of somatics, whether it's standing even or listening to music or whatever, allows people, it's almost like when you just open a portal and say, you can be human again. This is a restorative piece. You can be human. It just allows there to be a lot of possibility for what used to be fairly constrained, like we are only in a certain context here, and we're only with a certain way of being here, and we're only with certain kinds of roles. It just starts to open that up, even in these small little experiences. So we've started and have been doing more and more of these restorative practices, even for 5 minutes, to just give people a window in. And they seem then to have a bit of a breakthrough to then you can latch on to them throughout the rest of the event. We did this at a conference of national healthcare practitioners, and somebody had such a profound sharing. They said, I experienced my brother's death, right? And they described that to their partner. Imagine hearing that, right? And then the partner takes on this thing and then allows to see through that lens. Well, it had, once they shared that in public, that humanity, It just changed the entire conference for the next 2 days. That one 5 or 10 minute experience. So there is massive potential when we reconnect with humanity, in this case, through the body.
Thank you, Darin. Yeah, I love the I love all our metaphor, but the picking up the glasses and just seeing something through someone else's lens. And there's a couple things that I just want to drop here from the other two, but the empathy and the humanity and everything that you've just touched on in that share. And there's something about bringing something like that, something connective, something restorative, even if it's just in a one-to-one coaching session. There's something about showing a part of yourself or expressing something to someone else that you haven't expressed or you haven't shown, whether it's ever or in certain contexts, just this idea of really being seen and really allowing this part of you to open up. And it reminds me of a conversation Meryl and I had earlier today, just going back and forth, where there was a panelist who I think her mother came to watch the panel. I believe Nathan's mom was in here, and we joked, we should have a bring your mom to work day. And I mean, that little funny conversation is with me right now, because there's just something so vulnerable, or just that feels like seeing this side of this person's a child. This person was a child. This person was nurtured by this person, that there's just something there about learning something new about someone you thought you already knew. And that's so opening and so connective. And there's so much, I think, opportunity for empathy in that. And so that's just a little ditty from today. And I'm just reminded in my own dance and movement work, the part that people love are wary of in the workshops I facilitate is when we mirror each other through movement, and mirroring as well is a skill on the training. And there's just something so vulnerable, and therefore practices like that, I think, open us up to a whole new ways of knowing each other, and that opening of new ways to know each other gives us an opportunity to find common ground with someone that we might not have believed we had common ground with. So just a couple things that are here for me. But yeah, and we're talking about music, and Bryony talking about music, and but yeah, Caro, Bryony, anything on that? What is the potential of somatics and to connect us?
Yeah, oh, I love this conversation, because I recently wrote a piece around, and I called it AI Can't Blush. And that's obviously with the rise of AI and it being such a huge thing, and it can do so many things, right? It can write, it can analyze, it can simulate, it can sort information quicker than anyone in the world, whatever, all the things, but it cannot blush. And so my point around that, of course, is that that's our humanity, right? Like, that's what makes us human. The fact that we get nervous and our heart starts beating before we have to speak in front of people, or we start crying because we're washing the dishes and you think of a song and all of a sudden you're like in nostalgia mode and you cry. All these things that make us human. And a bit to your point about the story of like moms coming and, supporting their children. I mean, it's like, that's the thing that all this AI noise is also bringing to the surface. And honestly, like in 2021, I thought, because I do like to do things where I kind of think of myself as a bit of an innovator and a bit of a, like ahead of the curve type thing. But now it's really actually the time for this work because of AI. I mean, the bigger that becomes, the bigger the somatic field becomes, because we are going to be craving so much for that humanity. Like, we will love to see a typo in a letter or in a caption on an Instagram post. Like, we're going to crave for that. And so it's like, it's amazing because finally we can just be human, and not try and pretend that we don't write like with spelling mistakes or with syntax errors, especially if we speak, you know, another language. If we have different languages, like it will happen, you know. And I love to see that. Like, I love to see it, because I'm just like, oh yeah, that's you, you know, that's you. Your humanness is doing this thing. And we've got pulse, and we've got all these beautiful emotions and sensations and feelings that AI doesn't. And I really feel like if you're considering like doing a somatic training with us, or anyone else for that matter, but we're better, I have to say, you know, it's really the time now, because this is where the thing starts really pioneering and taking off. And we know when people say like, oh, AI is going to take all the jobs. Yeah, it will take a lot of the jobs, but it will never take away our humanity. And that's where we get to relate. So to me, the potential of this is like, you know, I don't think we even know how big the potential of working in the somatic field is, and taking it to the places that we've all shared here that we take it to. So it's now, really, it's now the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other panel that I would be very interested in having. Yeah, you know, I've found myself saying recently, if you want a somatic coach, find someone with a nervous system. So that's been my joke and very serious statement. But yeah, Bryony, let's hear from you.
Could be that it makes me think that you know, with less demand on our cerebral brain here, you know, the one that has to process information, because now we've got this wonderful thing that can do that for us. So the body doesn't need to kind of fuel this quite so much. It's then got loads more energy to fuel the brain and the other parts of the body, and the intestine and the heart and the body itself, you know. So maybe, you know, maybe it is a moment where there would be much more somatic work, perhaps as a save us from the AI, or perhaps as a, oh, I don't need to focus on that anymore because this machines can do it. I can put more focus on what can I do with my body when my brain doesn't need to be so engaged. That'd be, you know, that's a kind of dream world, till maybe long vision. But I think, you know, if I just think of my experience here of the, you know, the friends that I've made, the people that I've connected with since living in Brazil, particularly in this little part of where I'm living, to be honest, which is Engenho do Mato in Niterói. And so it's a kind of a little bit of a community of people who are kind of a bit like-minded, you know, so that kind of has a, and there's lots of different projects going on, people with initiatives that are exactly about how do we sense more, or how do we connect more to, you know, ourselves, but also this spiritual or energetic stuff that's in our world, in our nature. You know, how do we make sure that we can strengthen how much our body feels to be able to balance out the change that's going to happen with the amount of processing that's possible with AI, you know. There's going to be big changes. And so, yeah, there's quite a number of people working here in Brazil on lots of things, somatic in formats, different. Some people are, you know, somatic therapy names, you know. Lots of other people are working with, for example, facilitator Espiral's working with forest medicines of indigenous peoples, and working at a level of being able to really, you know, see and talk about the field of what's between us, that stuff that when we're in that somatic coaching moment, that you get this palpable sense of something other than the two people in the conversation. So there's lots of you know, it's hopeful. It gives me a hopeful feeling of, yeah, okay, it's a good direction to be going in. And I think with me, particularly for music, I think that idea of feeling the music and, trying to break down a little bit of, oh, I don't know how to play an instrument. I don't know how to sing. I can't express myself in that way. It needs to start from just feel what the vibration is in your body first of, something that produces sound. Feel it in your body first. And then from there, you can, yeah. Those are the kind of hopes for the future, aren't they?
Beautiful hopes. Thank you all for sharing on that. We could talk around all of this, even specifically this question or subject for hours, and always open to it. But I am mindful of time, and as much as I would love to continue this conversation, we are coming to the end. I'd love to know, and something for anyone listening to reflect on as well, but Darin, Bryony, Caro, I would love to know what you're leaving here with. Just a brief. What are you leaving here with?
Hope is, I think, what wanted to come through there. I think as we come towards the end of Planet Somatic, there's just so many amazing people wanting to do amazing work and doing amazing work and bringing this wisdom of the body through. And I think that's where it's at. And so it's just really hopeful to have been witnessing that from like 5 a.m. this morning until now, which is my time here, like 1:30. And, and that was only like a small snippet. So I'm very hopeful of what's to come in this field and beyond, actually. So, yeah.
Thanks, Caro.
Mine's a kind of sense of a thread that, or a few threads that have kind of connected together. Some things that were maybe my things and things with others too. That's a really nice feeling, things feeling like they're even more connected than they were before.
Thank you. Yeah, Darin.
Yeah, I was going to say connected. It's really easy to feel isolated and yeah, in that sense of being alone. And through this and through lots of other conversations, I do feel more connected. It's like there's really a big choice I think we have right now as a human species. And when I look at you and I think about the work the Somatic School is doing, the choice that we're making now is to get reconnected in different kinds of ways that, we were living in different contexts before this century you couldn't do. And so just knowing there's people saying, how do I reconnect in these techno times and in these spatially so diverse and other times. So I feel just more connected, and that's I feel very grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, connection and resonance, right? Resonance and the universal language of somatics and having a body. Thank you so much, Darin, Bryony, Caro. Thank you for being here and for your openness and your words and just everything that you brought energetically as well to this space. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at this session today. Thank you for listening. If you're catching up later or watching, I hope you found it or you found something nourishing, inspiring, insightful, or informative. For now, that is all from us, and wishing you an easeful remainder to your day, to your week, to your month, and hope to see you all again. That's our show, folks. I hope you found something nourishing, enjoyable, or inspiring in today's episode. Thank you for being here, and see you next time. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram at Radio Somanaut. You can also find out more about the Somatic School and our accredited diploma in body-oriented coaching at thesomaticschool.com, or follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. This is Whitney Dawn Piles, encouraging you to stay present, stay curious, and stay connected.